C++ background and are not too comfortable with object-oriented programming, often the first question is, well, what's the difference? See, if you wanted to modify the data from the outside, what will you do? You'll call the set, and then set will change this variable, right? Everybody agrees? That's the purpose of the set, to allow changes to the data from the outside. So people often say, well, why even write these 4 functions? Just make it public. So what's the answer?
Accessibility.
Okay, see in both cases, so again, let me repeat that question. In one case, we are making it public, so that from the outside, somebody can modify this data, correct? In the second case, we are keeping the data private, but through a tiny set function, we are allowing this to be modified. So the question is, why even write a set function? Why not just make it public, let somebody modify it? What's the difference between this approach and this approach? They both allow you to modify the data.
But this is authorized.
Say it again.
One of the getter setter method allows the user to be the variable to be modified during a program, but otherwise it gives direct access to the variable.
Well, the end result is both are allowing you to modify, right? Okay, so now let me give you the proper answer. Okay, in this case, we have unrestricted modification to the data, or reading of the data. Meaning, anybody can come and modify the data and read the data, so we are truly back to this problem of open access. Okay, so this will not solve the open access problem, right? Why is this different? Because set is a function. In a function, we can write additional code. To check if modification will be allowed, or modification should be allowed. Okay, so think of it this way. Okay, let me give you an analogy, then I'll come and explain it over here. Okay, let's say you wanted to take this C# class. Okay, so I have 2 choices. We open these doors. Anybody can walk in and sit down and take the class, right? Or the other option is we put a gatekeeper over here. So some person, before you walk into the room, they check your ID and they check, are you registered in the class? Only then you will come into the class, okay? So think of these tiny get and set functions like the gatekeepers, okay? Let's say the calling code, which wants to modify, does not have the authorization to modify. Then it will simply disallow the modification. Okay? Or even if we do not require any authorization, let me give you a simple example. Suppose you have a class called student. Okay? In the student class, one of the fields you declared is int test score. Okay? And you put a private keyword over here. Okay? So obviously from the outside somebody cannot modify it, right? Because we made it private. Okay? Now what if I make it public? So what if I make it public? And suppose we created one student, student S1 equal to new student. Okay, if I did S1 dot test1 score equal to 80, will this work? Will this code work if this was public? Yes. Yes. What if somebody said S1 dot test score equal to -50? Will this code work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because it's public. Anybody can do anything, right? Now let me put a gatekeeper over here, which is essentially this get and set function, and show you that if we try to modify it outside of 0 to 100, it will not allow it. So the proper way to write this will be something like this. Okay, so we will create a class called student, and I'll write it in more C# style. Okay, then we will say int test score. Okay, now in C#, if you don't put the keyword private is the default. In Java, public is the default. Okay, so you can add the keyword private, but even if you didn't do it, it will be a default of private. Okay, so you will declare in test score, right? Then you will write a set function. Okay, void set test score. So void test score in, let's say, score. Okay, then you will write if score is less than 0 or score is greater than greater than 100. Then throw new exception, invalid score, else test score equal to score. So here's one way to write part of the code in this class called student. Okay, so this set function, so here's my set function. So here's the set function, right? And this is the tiny gatekeeper set that I was talking about. Okay, and of course this will be marked public. Okay, and for those of you who are completely new, do not understand new exception, basically means generate an error for right now. Okay, so now take a look over here. Because the test score is private, if somebody tried to do this on this particular student class, okay, so if you try to execute this on this class, what will happen?
Invalid.
See, this minus 50 will go over here, correct? Okay, then it will do if score is less than 0. It is less than 0. So it will generate an error. It will not modify the score, right? So that's why from now on, any class that we create, whatever data we declare in that class, okay, you won't put public or private because in C# it is already default as private, right? But you will end up writing two tiny get and set functions. The job of the get will be to give you the value of that variable. Okay, and like I said, it's a complete function. We can further put one more parameter over here or further one more check over here to check what is the username of the logged in user. And if that user is not authorized to see the score, we can simply generate another error, right? So these get and set functions basically allow us, so get set, allow us to access data in a controlled manner. Okay. So we keep the data private. We provide get and set to allow us to access the data in a controlled manner. Okay, so one way, and by the way, this was just the set test score. Very similarly, if we were writing the get test score, it would look something like this: public int get test score. Okay, and return test score. Okay, and if we wanted to do some additional check, the security check, we can write that code over here. But as a minimum, this is how the get function will look like, and this is how the set function will look like for a student class. Okay. Now, how is this for those of you who have programmed in Java as an example? How is it different from Java so far?
Not really.
Isn't it the same?
Yes.
With one small difference, and what was that?
Private and public.
The default being private or public, right? So that's why I said if you know Java, literally if I gave you a one-page summary of this is the difference between C# and Java, you will learn C# in one day, okay? Well, 80% of C#. C# does have a few new things that Java does not have, and where it takes a little bit of time, right? And vice versa. If you knew C# and if you wanted to learn Java, if I gave you a one-page summary of the differences, in one day you can learn Java, okay? So that's one of the nice things about learning C# or Java. They both complement each other, okay? So now, even though this style was same as the Java style, and you can use that in C#, but C# has a slightly, C# gets this, it has another style for writing the get and set, and let me give you that style. And that style looks like this. Okay, so you will create a class called student. Okay, every language has its own convention. Okay, for example, if you are writing the Java program, if you create a class, class name starts uppercase. Okay, so that's why if you're creating a class called student, you will write it with capital S. Okay, and here same in C#. Okay, inside the class we declare variables. Okay, now variables inside the class start lowercase. Okay, so far that's the same in both C# and Java. Okay, so for example, if there's a test score, you will write it as test score. Okay, T lowercase. Each following word starts uppercase. Okay. Now, if you are programming in C++, right, then rather than declaring it as test score, you will write it as test underscore score. Okay, or some people will both write low. So we use underscore if the variable name consists of multiple words, right? But both in Java, C#, we do not use underscores. We simply will start the variable lowercase. Each following word will start uppercase. So try to follow the proper convention for each language. Okay. Now, instead of writing it in the get and set in this style, in C# we have this style is called property style or properties. Okay. So what we do is corresponding to each variable, we declare a property. starts uppercase. Okay, so this is called the property. And property is basically a wrapper for get set. Okay, so the corresponding property for the private variable starts uppercase. Okay, then there's a get part where we simply say return the private field test score. There's a set part where we'll say test score equal to value. Okay, and that's it. So rather than programming in the Java style or the C++ style, the C# property style looks like this. Okay, and how does it work? Okay,
Student dot.
so just like the original example, we will say S1 equal to new student. So first we have to create an object. Okay, then see previously, okay, in this style, I forgot to mention over here, this one will not, there's no such thing as test1 score. So if we wanted to call the set function, okay, we will have to say S1 dot set test score of -50. Okay, so you have to either call the set function or call the get function. Okay, now over here, because the test score is a wrapper for the get set, see it wraps around the get and set. So in C#, you can simply, outside of this class, simply say test score equal to 80 as an example, or int T1 equal to S1 dot test score. Okay, so what happens when the compiler sees this? What does it do internally?
Set.
It calls the set. So this value is a keyword, by the way. Okay, so in this case, this 80 will become the value, and it will get stored as the test score. Okay, so if the property appears on the right-hand side, it will call the get part. We'll obtain it and store it in T1. Okay, so from now on, because this is the popular approach, we will program the properties instead of writing get and set. And from a user point of view, it becomes a little bit easier to see. So even though internally it is exactly the same as Java. Okay, just a small difference. Okay. Anyway, so now let me mention a couple of things, 2 more minutes and I'll stop. Okay, so first of all, one more advice for this class. Okay, to learn programming, see your goal for taking this class is to be really good in programming. Okay, you don't become good in programming by reading books or reading examples online. You get good in programming by writing programs on the computer. Okay, so if you already have a laptop and you wanted to bring it to the class, that would be one good way, because I'll bring my own laptop and I'll create examples right in front of you. You can follow me, or whatever I do in the class, whatever code I write, make sure you go home and immediately try it on the computer. Otherwise, if you just read it and understood it, you'll never become a good programmer. Okay? So keep practicing. The more you practice, try changing things, try to understand. Okay, to give you one example, okay, what if in this example, I mix this, I call this, or let me leave it uppercase, What, by mistake, as if you were typing this, you put an uppercase over here. I'll give you a hint, compiler will still compile it. What will happen if you run it? and try to trigger this code. Okay, see, what is our test score? Test score is a wrapper for get and set. So when you're calling, for example, let's pick this example. Okay, if you're calling, let's make this, okay, you're calling this, right? Set over here, sorry. No, let me just go back to the original, the get. Sorry, this is the set. This is the set. Okay, yeah, so let me put this capital. If you put this capital, right? So as soon as it sees test score, the capital T is on the left, right? If the capital T appears on the left, what's the meaning? Call which function? The set or the set function. So as soon as we call this set and it tries to execute this, what will it do? Call set again. So the result will be an infinite loop. Okay, so your program will simply crash. So it's whatever it is. So that's why I say, as you practice, keep changing things so that you yourself understand why it's working, why it's not working. Don't try to memorize anything. Okay. Okay. Last comment is from next class onwards, I'll start to create programs. We'll start out slow, gradually we'll speed it up, so that by the end of the course, you guys are as good as any professional programmer. Okay, so that's the goal. You guys should download Visual Studio 2015, that's the latest. We'll work with the latest. Okay, UB has, is it called DreamSpark? I forgot, what was it called? Something, I'll put the information on the Kiwi website. Okay, so through DreamSpark you can download the latest full version of the Visual Studio. So try to have it ready so that Wednesday onwards you start creating programs. Okay. All right, today I'll stop over here unless you guys have any questions.